Keep a fire burning red and a Joshua representing of a comes hard here. You know. Big up Kidaki, Buxton massive. Hey Babylon boy, you go on like come son. Red.
Never joke, never joke, never joke. Oh, money never, money never, money never, money never, money never, money. I know what you conniving, money. Money never, money, money never, money, money. You can keep your conniving money. When you've been knocked for a bum, in a biz there'll be money. Now because your money done, you come with conniving money. When you had your pocket full, in a biz there'll be money. Now because your money done, you hustle for tell me money. Yes, money never, money never, money, money never, money, money. Now know what you conniving money. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. That's all the money that me walk for. A 2 pound note and a kill that piece. A 2 pound note and a kill that piece. A 2 pound note and a kill that piece. This is all the money that me walk for. I said money, neighbor, money, neighbor, money, money, neighbor, money, money. I know what you can I be money. Oh, Joseph.
Guyana and Guyanese, at home and abroad. Tune in the Guyanese Morning Time, hosted by Kadaki Amsterdam, where the sun always shines. Guyanese Morning Time, the people call it Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people call it Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again. We rise up early morning watching Comes TV, where wisdom and knowledge, yes, it is the key. Exposing corruptions over land and sea, where the wicked politician they try to trick me. Guyana is a land for everybody. With 6 races should live in harmony. Is one set of people getting aisle money. Is one set of people doing the thievery. Beat Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again. This is a program that you all can see. sharing your views and your integrity. Like it, comment and share it all around. Pass it to your neighbor, safe and sound. A sad situation going on in this town. The voice of the people is getting trampled down. Out of the mouths of babes and sucklings, which as ordained me to sing. I sing Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, fooling the people. You're promoting evil. Stop lying to the people. You are a part of the cycle. Stop fooling people. You're promoting evil. Stop lying to the people. You are a part of the cycle. I say Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, they got Breakford, Bork and Mark Benschop. David Hines and Kadaki Amsterdam, Sherrod Duncan, Nigel London, Normal Brown and Gavin Matthews. Big up Paslow, Port People Governor, Simona Brooms, Robin Simpson, Hampton Green and Winston Jordan. And yes, we can go right on and on. Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again.
The relatives and friends of young Wyndham Bacchus, they deserve justice. The family, the relatives and friends of our in Boston, they deserve justice. The family, the relatives and friends of Peter Headley, they deserve justice.
And so when we say that Guyana is an apartheid state, we have the evidence to show.
Hey fans, it's karaoke and oldies night this and every Thursday at Clock Twilight Sideline Dam, Buxton. Dance to the magical songs of yesteryear by popular DJs and Camps Audio. Admission is free. Come out, let's make memories at Clock Twilight Sideline Dam, Buxton North. You can get meat anywhere, but for the best cuts of chicken, beef, pork, mutton, and lots more, check out T and W Harris Butcher Shop, located in the East Rheinveld Market Meat Section. Call us on 609-7168, 641-4494. Ask for Rastaman. T and W Harris Butcher Shop, for the best in fresh cut meats and lots more.
Comes out your son. You burn the swine when I want you shine. The tree of life, them I want you climb, cause them heart no kind. Comes I say them heart no kind. Buxton Massive, Kidaki, Red Hat.
me a come. Me rule them. But it's a conscious lyric, and me nah ban it down. Me rule them. You must think them send me. But they come, yeah. Morning, I'm trying to change the weather in this country. It's hot and dusty. Morning, neighbor morning. Welcome to another program of Guyanese Morning Time. I am your host, Kidaki Amsterdam. It is 7 hours 26 on the 9th day of April in the year 2023. How have you been? How was your yesterday? We're keeping you going today. How optimistic are you about today? What are your plans for today? How you plan to change the happenings in this place? What do you plan to do to make a difference? What do you plan to make a difference? A lot of people want the difference. There are some man say everybody want to raid the barn. Nobody want to plant the corn. Right? How do you plan to make a difference? By just raiding the barn? Or you gonna put your shoulders to the plow? I think in this instance, we really need people to put their shoulders to the plow. Because it's hard work. It's not easy. What part are you willing to play? I'm just asking these questions. I want to know the answers. I don't have the answers. I saw since yesterday or sometime somebody was saying, and I'm seeing Plank Thomas saying perhaps the same thing. It is time Guyana put forward a woman for president to challenge the PPP. And that woman is likely to lead, to win, because they won't attack woman. Y'all don't know what y'all talking about. Plank, you don't know what you're talking about. The PPP? You sure? Go sit down and talk with Varshini Jagdeo. Well, she can't be Jagdeo. Talk with Varshini. I don't know if the PPP people that attack women. I remember a man named Kilaman Lal. There's no Kilaman Lal there. I think I was told recently they're quietly in Venezuela. I can't remember what he did there. I can't remember who did. But yeah, I remember the man. Don't be fooled. I heard a story about a certain big one at a certain government office recently who is alleged did just what his body is alleged to have done previously. Unlive his wife. Y'all know who is the PPP? Yeah, best rest yourself. Yeah, best rest yourself. Abigail Candace, great point. We got to think for ourselves. We got people thinking for us. Hey, shocking vibes are going on. But some of us would see the solution right in front there. And you don't embrace it because it didn't come from you, number one. And number two, it didn't look like you. You get that? It didn't look like you. And so you can't embrace it. Guyana needs all of its children. We all got to put our shoulders to the wheel if we're going to turn this donkey around. Good? I don't know who David the Cook is, but David the Cook said that Kidaki bias, one-sided. Yeah. I'm the ACDC type, so it gotta be one-sided. Forward ever, backward never. David the Cook. Some of y'all see one-sidedness in front of y'all don't even know it. Those of you who come here on a daily basis to tell people about all the good things y'all believe the PPP doing. Y'all in one side, y'all blind. Y'all are blind. Because you're looking at the surface. And you're not checking the foundation. So if it's shiny, if it glitters, it's gold, it's good. That's the other day over at Annandale, they right a stone's throw for me, obliquely opposite where I am. I had a contractor building street in the night. Over the weekend, apparently the engineer came and examined the street, drilled it to see if the requirements were met. Bops! Job can be passed. Job cannot be passed. Because what? Requirements weren't met. Who money involved? Taxpayers. Ask the people down at, I think that might be Calendar Street. In less than 4 hours, they resurface it. So go ask about the foundation and so on. Y'all blind. Y'all just looking at the top. It's shiny, glittery. I said good for how long? David the cook again with his foolishness. Abno did nothing for Buxton. And so I sit here talking. PNC or Abno can't go into Buxton because they would be kicked to the curb. David the cook, stop spreading propaganda. It's Buxton I live. Buxton I live. I've been kicked to the curb. The Buxtonians got a problem that has find me. As a matter of fact, let me tell people in relation to the friendship backdam side issue, land issue. The NDC, for my information, has served a cease and desist order on Nappy, as they call him. Hamer. What Hamer he is? Can't remember right now. I'm going to tell you all though. But not Kenneth Hamer. He's where is he? Leroy Hamer, also known as Nappy. The NDC has served a cease and desist order on him in terms of the clearing of the backlands there, or the lands at back of Friendship. He has so far resisted in that he has not stopped. But what is of import is that the government is aiding and abetting this misbehavior, because the NDIA has not stopped either. The Ministry of Agriculture has not withdrawn their equipment either. I think a sensible government and responsible ministers of government and permanent secretaries and so on, as soon as a dispute arises on cases like these, would have taken the necessary action to prevent further damage or further injury. And so even if it's part of their developmental plan to assist to clear lands for, let's say, farmers, then once a dispute arises, the correct thing to do, the responsible thing to do, is to cease and desist, stop the work. Especially if the NDC, the local area authority, has reached out to you to indicate that there's a problem there. But no, that is continuing. And so Buxtonians and Friendship residents and so on are going to be at rat among themselves, because it is not everybody who will allow their lands to be coveted by Leroy and friends. and friends of the government too. People are going to come into confrontation with each other. And then you might hear about murder, you might hear about bloodshed, you might hear about all kinds of injuries, and definitely you're going to hear about police. Right? Definitely you're going to hear about police. David, the cook, you could do the walk around boxing yourself. I don't have points to prove. There are a lot of things y'all don't understand about a lot of people and a lot of cultures. So I don't have to prove any point with you. I want to put you to the test. Send Jagio and Anil to the US for vacation. Send Jagio and Anil to the US for vacation. If they go successfully and come back, I can walk on boxing and ask donation support for the PNC. I'm a leading member of the WPA. And I guarantee you, if I walk this community in the name of the WPA, you will have quite a surprise. I also guarantee you that when the PNC people decide that they want to walk Buxton for support, you will be quite surprised. So you could stay in the office of the Prime Minister and run your mouth. Right? So residents are alerted once again that the misbehavior of Napi, Leroy Amer, continues at the back of Friendship. And the government continues to aid and abet. They continue to help him to disrespect and disregard the rights of villagers. Right? So please be alerted. And as one person tell me, you could tell the people do what they want to protect their land. Good? Tell the people do what they want to protect their land. Now let me tell you, in case you didn't realize or you weren't aware, that a matter of the Guyana Public Service Co-op Credit Union and that special general meeting and elections and so on is perhaps concluded. I hope it has reached its finality, because yesterday the judge ruled that this matter must come to an end, and so the elections must be treated as above board, and so the people who were recently elected, must be allowed to take control of the management of the Guyana Public Service Co-op Credit Union. Good. In summary, the judge ruled that the CCDO, that is the Chief Co-op Development Officer, has no mandate to intervene in the matter. Remember a few weeks ago, we were told that he had written to Team Ben, let's say, and asked them for some kind of information. And if I remember that time, Mentor responded that he wasn't going to provide any information because the matter was before the court. Right? Well, I think Mentor has been vindicated in that decision, because the judge ruled that the CCDO, that's the Chief Co-op Development Officer, has no mandate to intervene in the matter. The elected members must be allowed to take up their positions. And again, the CCDO has no jurisdiction in that matter, and so the CCDO should not be interfering with the elected members taking up their positions. And if there's a grievance that still exists, then those people can approach the court say it is set separately, and I think it's simply interpreted as you can approach the court, you could file a new matter before the court. And the judge, of course, said that the matter must come to an end, and it has been going on for too long, and so let things proceed. Senior counsel Neil Boston was rebuked, according to the information, by the justice for allowing his clients to disregard the results of the court-ordered election. Right? That rebuke there brought, in my mind, an issue to the forefront. That is, a lot of the officers of the court, why do you take lawyers? Let me start here. Why do you need lawyers? Or counselors, as they say. A lot of people believe that when you take a counselor, a lawyer, the job of the lawyer is to get you off. But as far as I understand, the job of the lawyer is to ensure justice is done. And there's a difference between getting you off and justice is done. In other words, if you're guilty, then the lawyer is not supposed to be, in the strict sense, be deceitful to cover up your guilt. That's not what the law perhaps says. And so I sit and I watch ever so often in places like the US and so on, lawyers get disbarred and things for misbehaving. But in Ghana, members of the legal fraternity are like gods, man. They do no wrong. They do no wrong. Some of them mistreat their clients. They do no wrong. Some of them misrepresent facts. They do no wrong. And so here's a senior legal man having to be rebuked by the court because what? He can't stand the ground and say to his clients, no, y'all can't do this. This is wrong. His first consideration is what? My clients are paying me. My clients are paying me. And therefore, if I give them advice that they don't like, it's likely that they will fire me. Is that what we're saying? Come on. So the court had to rebuke Neil Boston there. Good. What are some of the other things I want to talk about this morning? We started talking about, we spoke about a lot of things yesterday. Everybody has been reaching out to me to comment on the Granger interview on Mark Benschop's show. Benschop's shows. What is it? The Voice of Anansi or something like that. Benschop and Granger were revisiting history. And I said to you that tomorrow, Dr. HINDS will be here and we are going to talk a lot about Granger's recollection of history, Granger's assessment of the WPA, and stuff like that. So from where I stand, my comments are simple. It's admirable that Granger can remember the past so well and discuss it so fluently. But it is unfortunate that Granger has lost his short-term memory because events as recent as 2020, Granger has not found the time to discuss on any of Mark's program so that the man and woman who supported his candidacy and his presidency and his government and all of that can have a clear understanding of what transpired. And so one might argue that the gentleman, the elderly man, has selective memory. Right? He is selective in the things he remembers and discusses. I must ask why. Why? This is a man. When I listened to Granger on that interview, said, the least you say, or the least you say, the more I learn, or stuff like that. Because sometimes you don't always listen or read on the line. You have to go in between the lines. And I don't know how many of you recognize it, but based on his assessment of the WP on that program, I think that is why he treated with the WP the way he treated with the WP. Good? That's my assessment. We will delve deeper into that tomorrow with Dr. HINDS. Right? We will delve deeper into that tomorrow with Dr. HINDS. But I can say to you, I don't think there's a fight between David Granger and the WP, or even the PNC and the WP. The period of that fight is long gone. And the problem with many of our political leaders, national political leaders, is that they fail over the years to recognize the changes of the time. USSR is no longer blocked. There's no longer the Cold War going on. But many of our political leaders have failed to recognize that times have changed. And they have to change with the time, or they're going to be left behind. And if they hold on, they will keep us back. And that is where Guyana is right now. That is right where Guyana is. A lot of the people who, when you talk about the ills of the PPP, cuss out, and first attempt to label you racist and biased and one-sided and so on. A lot of them are not living in Guyana. I can tell you that for a start. A lot of them have not been back here in recent times. And so what a lot of them hear is second-hand or third-hand or fourth-hand information. But what they have in the forefront of their minds is their experiences of a long time gone. And so that is what they are using to inform them. Them dealing their experiences. Every time you criticize the PPP, you can hear people come and say, our PNC do for Guyana, I will not dal for make root, for make I will not flour for make roti and peas to make dal. And how long was that? How old were you then? And so nothing has changed from then to now. And so that is what they used to inform them. And so every time you criticize the modern government, the government of 2024, they take you back to the government of 1964 or 1984. Sometimes it's frustrating, but it's also it's also interesting, let me see. To recognize or to examine human psychology, how people think, how people form their ideas. And that is why we always talk about re-educating yourself, retooling. And so when it was okay to chop came with Plan Axe in 1960, nowadays they're talking about machine harvesting. But if the man who was harvesting cane in the 1960s stuck to the Plan Axe and did not upgrade his skill, when machines start to harvest, he's out of a job. He's left behind. His family will be stagnated because he's not earning. That is what they will let have us in this society. And all of them who stay down in Canada and the UK and US and so on, because they left for whatever reason, they're not helping. Because that's the Guyana they know or can think about. The next generations, all of those children who born in Canada and the US and so on, and go to one or two Guyanese parents and therefore claim Guyanese heritage, that they socialize the hate, they come up and they perpetuate the same ignorance that their foreparents perpetuating. And they get that information from third and fourth and fifth hand. But those of us who live here, and we see daily, when last you had a day without blackout, for example, you see daily what is happening in this society. And you talk about it, they say, you racist because of coolie government. No. I'm very objective because it's a failing government. It's a failing government. And if you can't call a government out for failing, then how are you going to get them to do what is right? How are you going to get them to move the country forward? It is alleged that the government is about to invest $100 million. Is that what the amount is? 150 million? $200 million? To bring an artist there. What could $200 million, $150 million do to improve the quality of life of Guyanese? Entertainment will relax them for, let's give it a maximum 48 hours. Yeah, by the Border Boy concert was after our rocks. But what happens after Border Boy has left? Our children are still hungry. Their parents who still can't provide for their children. There's still a large group of young out-of-school people who can't find employment. Have you looked around recently at the number, or have you looked around recently and taken note of the number of young people who are dressed in a security service uniform? Some of them ill-fitting, but don't worry, they fit the uniform. When you look at your society and a whole large number of your out-of-school young people are in a security uniform, what does it say to you? The education system has failed them to start with. In a society where it would seem as though construction is booming, you're not finding the majority of your young people in the construction sector. It means that you fail to prepare them for this boom. So they are not the welders, they're not the masons, they're not the carpenters, they're not the electricians. They're not even the architects and draftsmen and so on. They are the security guards. They are the security guards. And they are your young people. So when the older heads who are skilled in these areas die out or become incapacitated, what happens to your society? And some people are going to argue to say, at least they're working. How long will they be able to do that job? What are the long-term impact on their health and the healthcare system? Can you imagine your young people, 18, 19, 20, let's say 19, 20, 21, in the security sector, losing rest, day in, day out, what they're working for in terms of salaries, being inadequate to ensure that they get a balanced meal, at least daily, to ensure that they have the necessary nutrition for what they're doing. Can you imagine the long-term impact of that? Some people call it madness, some people call it nervous breakdown. I'm talking about the deterioration of the mental and the physical over time. Yes, Reza, and that's a fact. Security needs educated people too. Security needs educated people too. As a matter of fact, I dare argue that a lot of the young people who are in the security system are educated. Many of them would have gotten at least a 5 or 7 or 8 CXC subjects. But that's my point. This system does not provide for the upward mobility by way of their education. Apart from that, the fact that so many of them have to go to the security sector says that their educations were their education was not properly planned. Let me reiterate, we are supposed to be in a construction boom. Where are our skilled people? Where's the upgrade to the technical and vocational training centers? And when I say upgrade, I'm not talking about improvement in a building. I'm talking about upgrade curriculum. I'm willing to bet that if you go to GITC, you go to GTI, you go to NATI, you go to LTI, the courses that they offer are courses that have been there for the last several generations. In an oil producing era in this country. So it's a failure of the system. And so if we want better for the nation, if we want better for the people of the nation, we have to stop thinking in those era and think for the now. Nowadays, I mean, I was talking with one of my former students the other day, and we had a good laugh because he was encouraging me, Mr. Sam, AI is it now? AI is it now? Jenny Arrow is saying that her son who got 10 CXC subjects, 10 subjects was forced to do security. And he had to work for 12 hours or more without anything to eat or no release at times. So he quit. Sandra is telling us sleep deprivation also can cause one's brain cells to die. This can lead to dementia and Alzheimer's in the long term. Yes, Dennis, GITC is opposite Kuchel. So these are the kind of things I'm talking about. So at least I know Sandra and Jenny and so on, they were the program. But you're telling me that these people that we are paying daily from the coffers of this nation, these people are supposed to be charge-free and the cream of the crop and all kind of things, have no intuition to recognize or to even think of these long-term impact on the society. Because Alzheimer's and dementia is a call on the healthcare. Nervous breakdown, as we like to say, is a call on healthcare. Yes, Dennis, GITC opposite Kuchel is still operational. And while we should be improving these tech-voc institutions, Amobi Sayenka, I really want Amobi. I'll tell you, Amobi, Amobi is a tech-voc specialist. As a matter of fact, at one point in time, I think he was leading up tech-voc education in Ghana until the PPP found wherever the man named Chinedu, was it Chinedu? Abobi, I wish you can tell us that story. Maybe you can call and tell us what happened there in terms of tech-voc and you and Chinedu and the wickedness of the PPP and stuff. Yes. So instead of investing the resources of the nation to improve on tech-voc education, for example, so more of our young people get employment and benefit from the construction boom. And that's a skill that they will acquire, that would be a lifelong skill because people are always building, even if it's a coup. A dark pen, as we like to say, chicken pen. Right? Instead of doing that, the government of Guyana continues to take our resources and give it to their friends and family and cronies and deal with third party and fourth party and so on. So everybody gets a kickback. And by the time the investment reaches to the student, it is so watered down that it can hardly impact their lives. Right? I saw the government of Guyana signing the other day some kind of memorandum of understanding for some foreign institution to do technical education in Guyana. When that same commitment could have been given to the local institutions to improve their curriculum. At the end of the day, you bring a foreign institution to do the job, they do the job, they're gone, and your institutions don't grow. Amobi is telling us that I think the GITC is still entry level. They have no diploma courses, none. But some people call that progress. Some people say I'm one-sided when I point out feelings like these. Some people say I'm racist when I criticize an Indian-dominated government. Am I really the problem? Or the problem is with your government and you, those of you who got a day mentality and supporting them? We can do better. Okay, thank you for that clarification, Amobi. Amobi said Cheney doing had nothing to do with him leaving the TVET Council. Right? But like Amobi, there are many, many professionals across this society who have skills that could benefit the upward mobility of our youngsters. But the government doesn't utilize it, refuses to acknowledge it in many instances, simply because what? These people don't look like them. These people are not playing ball with them. But oh, it's because of racism make we talking about it. How will we get our just due? If one side of the divide, because there is a divide, cannot come to acknowledge that, hey, our government is not doing right by this country. And some people might ask, why are you saying one side? Why are you saying one side? Well, let me explain why I say one side. Even I spoke about Guyanese program on Mark the other day. Even that discourse painted the WP as being, as I want to say, an enemy of the people. For joining with the PPP and other opposition parties at the time to challenge what was interpreted then as a misbehavior of the sitting government. Go back and you look at it, and you'll come to recognize how many African Guyanese joined the struggle, joined the fight against an African Guyanese government for better governance and for fair treatment of Indo-Guyanese who were claiming that they were being discriminated against. And that struggle waged for years. That struggle resulted in changing government, changing institutions, etc. But when the very people were complaining of being discriminated against were given power. They in turn became the abusers. They became the abusers. And their supporters who were supported to challenge a system that they considered abusive to them are turning a blind eye. Instead of doing just what the other set of people did previously to quote unquote right a perceived wrong. Well, Odessa Natoya is asking, were they being discriminated against? Let the historians answer that. But from where I stand, no. They were not being discriminated against. They were not being discriminated against. But they were shouting the loudest, and so people believed them, I guess. And so for whatever it's worth, one section of the society came out in defense of another section and fought for good or better governance. But when that section had the opportunity to lead, what did they do? And what are they continuing to do? How are we going to change a society like that? I believe for the greater part, if we left them old people that day thinking aside, and their day influences, the young people can move this nation forward. But are we willing? Or are people comfortable with the imbalance in this society? Parmanan said it was more than misbehavior. It was total dictatorship and oppression. Parmanan, I bet you if you check with an open mind, compare from Fox Burnham government all the way down to Desmond Wright, or come right down to David Granger. I'm positive you'll find more human rights abuses under the PPP than you'll find under those governments that I mentioned. I'm positive. There were more state killings or state-sponsored killings under the PPP government than there would ever have been under this government that Parmanan described as total dictatorship and oppression. But is Parmanan willing to accept that, acknowledge that? Look at the number of unsolved crimes there are. Murders especially. In this society, this modern society, compare them to the dictatorship and oppressive government that you're talking about. And that is what I'm talking about. Parmanan is one of them from the Dina Day time. And they will use their Dina Day minds to influence the now generation. At least their now generation. And the wheel continues. We can't afford that. We have to do better as a people. Until such time that the likes of Parmanan and the next generation come to the point of acknowledging that wrong is wrong, and we will chant it down. I don't know we're changing. But what I know for a fact, that with the continued imbalance in this society, a lot of people are going to feel the squeeze. And they're going to blame another set of people for it. And so the rift, the divide, is going to become wider. Let me make it stark for you. When them black people picnic, can't provide for themselves and can't be provided for, they're going to start to take from who get. And who get going to start to see them as the enemy. And in most instances, they're going to stand up for defend the thing. And then black people picnic will also stand up for the right to live. And so we're going to end up with some serious clashes in this society. And maybe the cycle will just continue of us clashing with each other and hating each other for decades after, and then clashing with each other and hating each other for decades after. I think there is an easier solution. And I know you know that there should be an easier solution. The lines are opened. 6225933 is the number to call. You're tuned to the Guyanese Morning Time. I am your host, Kidaki Amsterdam. Let's start the thing. In a modern society, as I wait for your calls, in a modern society, when the rest of the world is delving into modernity, Guyanese can't even accept, or Guyanese can't even do international business and accept international payment without having to do a bank transfer and international money order and all of that. When other people can be selling tamarind balls in another territory and you can sit here and pay them via PayPal as one of the electronic platforms, Guyanese can't accept a dime in payment for any of the produce or anything with such ease. They got to drop through hoops to be able to get their payments. How do you expect industry and commerce and the cottage industry and indigenous industries to develop and grow? This government in a modern time has no modern thinking. Call your life.
Yes, good morning. Good morning to you and all my black brothers and sisters in Guyana. Help is on the way, but we have to do our best for Abin and lead the rest for him. I want to talk about two words quick this morning. One is protest, and the next one is rally. Two words, two different meanings. You see, rally represent the word meeting, where you mobilize the people, then inform them what's going on, and let them know, get ready for the next election, and what the government is doing to the country, and the money coming in, and the people that is not benefit from it. To me, rally represents sun. It do not wake up the government. It do not make the government to understand there is a serious problem in the country. But the word protest, it represents a stone. You know, when you protest somebody a stone, it gives them pain or you bust them head. That is what protest does do. Protest does even make business people call the government and say, hey, we're losing billions of dollars. It's time for you to do something. What I'm saying this morning to my black brother and sister, it is time for we start represent the word rally and represent protest. It is time for a demand from the government. Our children deserve better. It is time for black people come together and go outside there where you're talking about all hands on deck and coalition. It is time for we go outside there on the street and shut the business down. Get the government attention. That is how you will get change. That is how the government will know what you're doing to us. It is wrong. We gotta stop talking and we teach too much of it. There's nothing more to teach. But there's time to protest. Let me demonstrate that word from today or tomorrow. Start protesting and see you get change. If we could protest in front of that building, Black Party, Black Friday, night 12 o'clock, for go and spread what we get and credit, why we can't protest for our children's rights and get jobs and don't depend on security job. I'm not condemning the job. But how can you get 10 subject and you got to open your eyes all night? It is unfair to black people. And Guyanese is called, don't wait for Mr. Abinatu. It's the people that have to represent the word protest, not a leader. A leader that represent the word rally. Because you got to bring the people them together, mobilize them and all this. But we are the people. The citizens have to represent the word protest. And that is how Jack Joe run away with murder. Because we are not protesting. We have to start protest. Forget about that word, rally, and start protest. Thank you very much for your time.
Morning, neighbor, morning. Guide my strength and my everything. Morning, are you morning? Welcome to another program of Guyanese Morning Time. It is now 7 hours 18 on the 10th day of April in the year 2024. I am your host, Kidaki Amsa. Welcome to the program. How you been? How you make out yesterday? Yesterday was Tuesday. I feel like I'm a day ahead of time. I'm darkest that I was started thinking that today is Thursday. Well, yeah, yesterday was Tuesday. How you make out? What were you able to achieve? What did you do to preserve your mental health? Because mental health is a real issue in this country, you know. Shama used to say they got a lot of mad people outside than they got inside. Good. And so when I come on the program this morning, I see a couple mad people. But I ain't gonna worry with them just yet. Right? I see they come talking ignorance already. You got to work if you want a good life and so on and so forth. I don't know that there are people who are not willing to work to improve their living conditions. I know that there are people who refuse to work because the remuneration, etc., the conditions of work, etc., do not suit their ideals for work. Right? And so a lot of us run around the place and they're looking for handout, they want to work. If working is the means by which you provide for yourself, why wouldn't you want to work? So this myth, this ignorance that people are always coming and tell, yeah, I gotta work to enjoy the good life. Imagine the number of persons, the thousands of public servants who are working and are yet unable to enjoy the good life. Picture that. Thousands of public servants working, living in cramped conditions. 10 generations living in a house. Because the systems are not in place, or the systems don't function well enough and fair enough and smooth enough for them to get out and get up. But some of you who are sucking the blood out of this nation, the lifeblood of the citizens of this nation, always come here and talk foolishness. Guyanese deserve better. And until better is given to them, folks like me will always talk about it. We'll always talk about it. I still am asking the question, is there any truth to information which suggests that 45 children were taken to Disneyland by the First Lady over the Easter holidays? This should be a positive for the First Lady if it happened. Why not publicize it? Is it because nobody would like to answer the questions that may follow if it happened? I see an international company is taking the government of Ghana to court in relation to the Wales Gas to Show project and the delays. And they're taking them to court for several million US dollars. Several million US dollars. Let me get the exact amount so you're going to know. 90 million, more than $90 million US. They're taking the government of Ghana to court for. More of our money going down the drain foolishly. Because I'm almost sure the people can win. There's some undertakings in contracts that you have to honor. When you fail to honor, people go to court and they win most times. Remember the Rhodesia matter, I think? It's Suriname Beverage Company? Yeah. That's how the PPP is throwing money down the drain, but they can't find it in their hearts to use them same money and compensate public servants, especially adequately. Anyhow, it's Wednesday, it's 22 minutes past 7 o'clock hour. Dr. Hines is in the house. Dr. Hines, welcome to the program. How are you doing? No voice from you, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning to you, sir. How are you?
Fine, thanks. Good to be on again.
I was trying to get accustomed to see you with the addition to your face, but you don't wear the thing consistently, man.
What's that?
Your specs.
Well, it's for reading.
Oh.
It's for reading. Yes. It's for reading, yes.
All right, so what's going on, boy? A lot has happened since you last spoke and so on, including the Venezuelan president calling the Guyanese president a puppet. Is it the first time in history a president refers to another like that, or it has happened?
Oh, no. That is normal banter between ideological adversaries.
All right. I just checking, because sometimes we go so far down the rabbit hole, we can't even find ourselves after going that far down the rabbit hole. Last week I asked you about the WPA and its activism and so on, when it became a political party and so on and so forth. And we had what I would call a spirited discussion about the WPA and the role of choir in the different parties and so on and so forth. Over the last weekend, a number of persons have been sending to me a link of a discussion with Mark Benschop and David Granger. And it's centered around the WPA. There are a number of things said in that discourse. I hope you would have seen it. And so, because I want us to talk some more about the WPA in relation to some of the things the former president said. And so let me start by saying one of the things he said, WPA was an idea. In his mind, and I'm paraphrasing, so I will be forgiven if I don't get it straight. In his mind, WPA was never organized. It was an idea that basically didn't achieve much. What are your responses or your addition to that discourse?
No, I listened. I looked at the interview between former President Granger and Mark Benschop, and I think in its entirety, I would say the interview was a good interview coming from President Granger. He is a PNC person speaking about the activities of the WPA. And when you consider the history between those two parties, you do not expect much kindness in such a discourse. But I found that by and large, I would say the interview was very good. So I just want to put that on the table. There were a few gaps, and I think the president suffered from lack of information. Obviously, it's not something that he researched and studied. He was repeating some talking points for the most part. Didn't do enough research in order to do real justice to the questions that were asked of him. He was he's done a series on rebellions in Guyana. I think he did the Rupununi rebellion, and he's much more informed about the Rupununi rebellion, obviously, you know. And then Benschop asked him about the civil rebellion, the WPA civil rebellion of the 1970s. Even Benschop didn't get it accurate. What is referred to as the civil rebellion is WPA's activities from about June, July of 1979 to the time when Rodney was murdered in June of 1980. So it's that year. That is what is referred to as the civil rebellion. Benschop said it was in the 1970s, so he wasn't too sure himself when it was. And Mr. Granger dated what he called the civil rebellion from when Rodney came in 74 to when Rodney died in 1980. The term civil rebellion was coined by none other than who? A.U.C. Guyana. And it was coined after the fact. There was this heightened activism and confrontation between the WPA and the PNC, mainly the PNC government. And the confrontation was mainly on the streets, where the WPA was holding large public meetings and captured the imagination of the country. And years later, when writing about it, Guyana coined the term civil rebellion. So it was not something that the WPA sat down and planned, said we are going to plan a rebellion. The rebellion took off. The activities took off, and Guyana named it civil rebellion after the fact. So I think both the interviewer and the interviewee didn't know much about what they were talking about. And so that was the first thing. The WPA was an idea? Of course it was an idea. All organizations, all parties were an idea. The PPP was an idea. It was an anti-colonial idea. The PNC was an idea. Things start as ideas, and then they move into practice. You want to start a business, you don't go willy-nilly. You, first of all, you have an idea of what you want to do, and then you put the idea into practice. So Mr. Granger was trying to use the term idea to put down the WPA, you know? But it's all parties are an idea. The WPA emerged at a particular point in Guyana's history. And what President Granger did very well was that he talked about the emergence of the WPA within the context of the larger Caribbean. And to understand the WPA, you have to understand that. It was the post-colonial era. Independence had come to these Caribbean territories, and independence did not deliver for the Caribbean masses what they expected in that first decade of independence, going back to 1962, when Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica got their independence. Guyana and Barbados got theirs in 1966. And there was disillusionment. Well, first of all, there was excitement about independence. And then there was disillusionment. And that disillusionment was captured not just in politics, it was captured in music. Reggae music emerged out of that disillusionment. The first popular music coming out of Jamaica was ska. It was a fast beat instrumental music. And then that lasted from the early 50s up until about 1968. And at that time, disillusionment with independence had begun to step in. And people turned inwards. And the music that we were projecting reflected that. It moved from ska to rock steady, which was more a kind of love music, boy meets girl. Because as people become disillusioned with politics, they usually turn inwards. And as they turn inwards, they're producing culture that reflected that. And rocksteady lasted for about 18 months, as they say, 18 glorious months. And then it transitioned into what we know today as reggae, which started in around 1969. So the disillusionment came out. What happened with rocksteady is that the music slowed down. It put on lyrics, but the lyrics was boy meets girl. And then as you move into reggae, the music slowed down further, and the lyrics changed from boy meets girl to political lyrics. And it is out of that came Bob Marley. While that is happening, we are seeing the same thing in literature. We are seeing the emergence of a phalanx, a cadre of writers from V.S. Naipaul to Samuel Selvon, to George Lamin, Martin Carter, A.J. Seymour, and I can go through and through. So at the level of literature, we see the movement towards a more kind of political kind of literature coming out of our Caribbean. And then in politics. And all of this is reflected in what is called the Black Power movement. Because the question people began to ask after independence is that we have become independent, but when I go to the bank, I don't see Black people working in the bank. When I look at the civil service, I don't see Black people. I still see red-skinned, half-white people in these positions. So what is this independence to Black people? And as people are asking those questions, they are beginning to say, well, what we want to see in our independence is Black, we use the word empowerment today. Back then they say what we want to do is we want to see Black power. And so the notion, the idea of Black power arises from this coming of independence. And the Black people, the dark people, the brown people of the Caribbean are still in the same position. From Jamaica in the north, Jamaican Bahamas in the north, right down to Guyana in the south. And so they begun to ask questions. All of this is encapsulated in Walter Rodney returning to Jamaica to teach and wanting to teach African history at the University of the West Indies in a country that is 90% Black. And he's refused. The authorities refused to let him teach African history. They wouldn't have it. This is 1968, 6 years after independence. Walter Rodney, of course, goes into the countryside. He goes into the ghettos and began to ground with the poor people, mainly Rastafarians and so on. But there were also youths who were not necessarily Rastafarians. And he began to ground with them. And the government of Jamaica saw that as an affront. and it banned Walter Rodney from Jamaica. And there were riots by Jamaicans for a Guyanese academic who was banned, because they're saying, you are banning a man who wants to teach us about ourselves. And they took to the streets, and it became known as the Rodney riots. You know, precincts are born, the police respond with tear gas, they kill people, and so on. And that incident became what we call the formal beginnings of the Black Power movement in the Caribbean. The same thing is happening in the United States of America. The Voting Rights and Civil Rights Act were passed in 65, 60, 64, 65. Black people were now constitutionally integrated into American society, or reintegrated, or whatever you want to call it. Dr. King at struggle. That's what the civil rights movement was about. It was about constitutional equality for African Americans. And so that, in a sense, that was their independence. But independence had come, and African Americans found that they were still left out and locked out of the economics of the society. They still didn't have jobs. They still couldn't work in certain places. And they began to respond. We first had the Watts riots in 1965. Dr. King was in Jamaica, and he had to fly back. And when he went to Watts, Washington, they said, Dr. King, you fought for us to sit at the table, but here we are at the table, we don't have money to buy anything. And so there was a march after Meredith was shot, and the police went in and tear gassed them as they assembled in a schoolyard in Mississippi. And Stokely Carmichael took the mic and he said, as of tonight, all scared niggas are dead. What do we want? And the crowd responded, Black Power. What do we want? Black Power. What do we want? Black Power. And so Black Power emerged in the United States of America, right? So as this Black Power ferment is taking root among Black people, post-colonial Black people, post-independence Black people, who are saying, so independence has come, but where is the economic power for us? And out of the Black Power movement came organization. Out of the idea of Black Power came organizations. In Guyana, it was ASCREA. In Grenada, the New Jewel Movement, and go through the Caribbean. And these Black Power organizations became left-wing organizations for the most part. In Trinidad, there was the NJAC and so on. And they began to challenge their own states. In Trinidad, they almost overthrew the Trinidad government in the 1970 revolution. They were saying to Eric Williams, you wrote Capitalism and Slavery. You radicalized us and you are now the prime minister. And where are the people working in the banks? Where are Black people working? And there was the big explosion there. At the same time, the army mutinied. And they almost overthrew the Trinidad government. Dr. Eric Williams asked Venezuela for help, and Venezuela had a couple of warships off the coast. The Americans had a couple of warships off the coast. And they were able to quell that rebellion. And so it was in that context that these, what you call new left organizations, came into being. It was a merger of Black Power and left-wing ideology, Marxism for the most part. And so as we come into the 1970s, we have this new independence movement. Professor Gordon Rowley said it was the sons questioning their fathers. The sons and daughters questioning their fathers. You see, Burnham was education minister in 1953, when the PPP of that day opened up education possibilities for Black poor people. They couldn't go to Queen's College before that. And the PVP under Burnham as education is open up. So people like Walter Rodney and Clive Thomas could now go to Bishops, Queens. And it was from there they went on to university and they came back into the region with a radical education, because by the time they got to university, they're reading Malcolm X, they're reading Dr. King, they're reading Che Guevara, right? They're reading C.L.R. James. And so, unlike their fathers, Burnham and them, who were reading Latin and so on, because they didn't have those people to read, their sons and daughters are now reading Eric Williams and reading these radical writers, and they come back and they're saying to their fathers, this independence, what about it? This independence means that we have to make a clean break with colonialism. So they're challenging their fathers, according to Professor Gordon Rollier. And they're challenging their fathers at the level of culture. You know, the great Garfield Sobers became captain and couldn't deliver. He went to Rhodesia and he came to Guyana, and the government told him, you can't come here because you went to Rhodesia where they're slaughtering Black people. So you're even questioning the Sobers. And out of that questioning of the Sobers and so on came Vivian Richards with the red, green, and gold on his hand. Came Michael Holden, fast, furious, fearsome, and rhythmic. Came Gordon Greenidge, who says, they call me a wonk. What is that? I didn't know. I learned it was a derogatory term for Black people. And I felt that the only way I can respond to racism is with a bat in my hand. And I went at that ball with all the fierceness, the anti-racism, a set of political cricketers. They came out and they, you know, they're the ones who made West Indies win for 20 years. So at the level of cricket, level of music, the great Bob Marley in Jamaica, and a whole host of them in Trinidad, Chalk Dust, the Mighty Juke, Black Stallion, Calypso Rose, they're asking you questions, they're saying Black power. And at the level of politics, we're seeing it. So President Granger got that right. The origins of the WPA came out of this idea that our independence could do better. Some of the governments in the Caribbean responded. In Jamaica, they kicked out Shearer, who had banned Manley, who had banned Rodney, and they elected Michael Manley. And Michael Manley said, I am Joshua. They used to call him Joshua. And Black people, you know, support, he said democratic socialism, which is a combination of Black power, liberal democracy rolled into one. In Guyana, Forbes Burnham said, I am moving away. I am moving away from Western capitalism. And Forbes Burnham declared himself Marxist-Leninist. He began to nationalize. He nationalized sugar. He nationalized bulk. This is what the Black power and radical movement is calling for. So Burnham made the shift. Eric Williams made the shift after the 1970 revolution. Black Trinidadians start working in banks and start holding top positions. So some of the governments responded to the pressure of the Black Power movement. And WPA came out of that. Walter Rodney became the spokesperson intellectually of the Black Power movement in the Caribbean. And he came back to Guyana in 1974. Walter Quayana and Moses Bagwan and Clive Thomas. President Granger forget Clive Thomas and Ratoon, or he probably didn't know about them. They were at the university. It was led by Clive Thomas, Joshua Ramsamy, Omowali, and they came together with Quayana Ipro, Quayana Askria, Moses Bagwan Ipro, and for a brief moment, Brindley Ben was with them, but Brindley Ben left because he felt they were not tough enough on Jagan. That is the irony. So he left very early. And so that was the emergence of the WPA, this idea of black power, which then became people's power. More from black power to become people's power. And that was the idea that gave birth to the WPA. It's a thing that WPA was not organized. The WPA was not organized in the same way as the old party were organized. The old party were organized to win elections. These new parties were organized to change the society. To change the society. So when President Granger said, well, the WPA didn't achieve anything. Well, when you're out of government, what can you achieve? But it forced the PNC to adopt policies that they wanted: nationalization, foreign policy to Africa, black people getting jobs. So to see the success of the Black Power movement, you have to see where they push the governments to go. In Jamaica, social reforms under Manley, better must come. Sing the reggae singers, and the Rasta people began to follow Michael Manley. Better must come. For the first time, Rastas are treated with respect. With respect. So when you're talking about the achievements of the WPA and these left-wing radical movements of the 70s, their achievement is in where they push the society. And the big achievement is what you're looking at here this morning, is one of the achievements. They radicalized a whole generation of us. I was going to school, a schoolboy in the 70s. And you're inundated with Bob Marley's music. You're inundated, you're reading Samuel Selvon and George Lamin and Martin Carter, not Shakespeare. You are seeing West Indian cricketers walk onto the cricket field and demolishing all comers. That creates now a new generation of radical West Indians, whether you're PNC and maybe some of them PPP and so on. The whole generation was radicalized by this movement, this idea that the brother is talking about, Brother Granger. And so to understand the WPA, all of us, of my generation and subsequent generations, were influenced by that activism of the WPA and the Black Power, People's Power movement and organizations. Dr. Green, who is now the Chancellor of the university, he did a study, and it showed that there was an overlapping of members of the PNC/YSM and ASCRIA. That 90% of, more than 90% of them, 100% of the YSM members in the late 60s and the early 70s were also ASCRIA members. The Yoruba Singers, for example, started as an ASCRIA group. It was the ASCRIA group of Campbellville, led by Ezzy Rockcliffe and them, that started the Yoruba Singers on the suggestion of who? A UC Quayana. As he says that publicly. It was an Askrea group. Askrea was calling strikes in Linden. A white man working at Denver in those days exposed his penis to some nurses, and Askrea shut down the industry. Said this white man has passed black women, and they called a strike, general strike in the industry. And they called about 3 or 4 other strikes. When Denver was nationalized and it became Gaiba, the question was what was to do, what to be done with the insurance money. And the PNC under Burnham had ideas about what he wanted to do with the insurance money. And the workers had other ideas. And there was a big strike called the Ryler Strike. The Ryler Strike. It was led by Askrea. And what is called a committee of 10. And that committee of 10 became the organization of the working people, which morphed into the WP. So this Black Power idea really caused a lot of change in the region. And that is why I'm saying Brother Granger didn't do his research, you know, or maybe he omitted to mention what he knows. He himself is a product of the Black Power movement. He belonged to the Queenstown Askrea group. In fact, it is said that one of the reasons he never became the top man in the army is that Burnham always had questions about his loyalty, whether he was loyal to Askrea and Guyana or loyal to Burnham. That may not be true, but this is because they all were. He himself is a product of this WPA thing that he's trying to say produce nothing. All of us during that period, and there may be people in the audience who will remember that, all of us were captivated by this idea, including Granger. Mark is too young to remember that, but Granger certainly. And like I said, Granger himself, you know, he was part of this group of young, brilliant black men who were sent to Sandhurst, and there's another military school in England. I don't think Granger went to Sandhurst, he went to the other one. And they came back to take over the army, and they did. In Trinidad, that is what caused the mutiny. A set of black and Indian young men were sent to Sandhurst and other places with the promise that when they come back, they'll take over the army. And when they came back, these older white Trinidadians didn't want to give up leadership of the army. And the army mutinied in 1970 and joined the students in the Black Power movement to cause the 1970 revolution. In Guyana, Burnham turned the army over to these young bright men, you know. And when they went to Guyana and asked Guyana if he's going to have a similar revolution in Guyana, he said, I don't have any need to, because Mr. Burnham is practicing Black Power. That was the time when Guyana and Burnham were together. So we didn't have a revolution here in the same way as in Trinidad. Where the Black Power is, the radical movement challenged Burnham was not on things like nationalism. Burnham did that. Not on things putting black people to work in big position. Burnham did that. Where they challenged it, not on foreign policy to Africa and South Africa. Burnham did that. Where they challenged him was on the question of democracy. Because the price for all those radical changes Burnham made was that he did not entertain internal dissent. You challenge him, he took that almost personal. And so it was on that score that the radicals challenged Burnham. And in 1979, that civil rebellion was the result of that challenge to Burnham on the way in which he dealt with human rights issue, the way in which he dealt with dissent and so on. Almost what we are facing here with the PPP today. And I am predicting that there will be a similar civil rebellion against this PPP, because what it has done over the last 3 years is to radicalize a whole new generation of young black, mainly black, but also some brown people, are saying, here is a lot of money coming in, but we are not feeling it. We are now an oil economy, but we are not getting it. And that is what you saw in the teacher strike, where black teachers and Indian teachers and Amerindian teachers in a new movement. It is the same thing that happened 40 years ago, 50 years ago, where people are saying, money is here, change has come, Guyana is now the fastest growing economy, but where are we? And that is why we are in the process of a civil rebellion without knowing it. And it is those questions that the Black Power radical movement asked that gave rise to the WPA. And today we are asking similar questions. And if you notice, the PNC is not equipped as a party to deal with those radical questions. That's why Norton is getting so much trouble. Norton himself is radical, but his party is not radical. Right? And so in the 1970s, the movement threw up its own parties. Now, it's different. I don't think the movement is throwing up parties. What it is throwing up are tendencies that are putting pressure on the PNC to change. And are putting pressure on, even parties like what is today the WPA, which is not the same as it was 40 years ago, 50 years ago. But there's pressure on the PNC, pressure on the AFC, and not the AFC so much. And I think pressure on the WPA to create new organizations to meet the challenges of the time. This new movement has created this program that I am on this morning. New ways of political communication. So I don't think President Granger did study the issue enough to do what I did. So I am doing it for him here this morning. He gave an outline, but he didn't do the analysis. And so that is why I'm doing the analysis here for him this morning.
I want to go a little contrary. Mark Benschop indicated that he wants to call. So Mark, if you're listening, you can call. You can put in the next question, or you can put up your defense, whichever you're calling for. You can call now, so the doctor will respond. Right, because from here, I want to go to, I want to ask, thank you very much for the layout, the whole history and so on of how we arrived at the WP and so on, right? One of the things I want to note is, at least from my observation, it would appear as though former President Guyanese attempted to paint the WP as a failure, even in this Black Power movement era, because he pointed out, for example, the Black Jewel movement, and so on.
New Jewel,
right? And he
the Grenada Revolution,
right? And some other one, which he associated, in my mind,
with the WPA.
Failure. And so the WPA was always associated with failure, right? Mark is on the line. Let's hear Mark, and then we'll address that issue.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, Benschop.
Dr. Hines, war break. Dr. Hines?
Good morning, my brother.
Morning, sir. War break. You call me now.
Good to hear you early in the morning.
morning, Doc. I can understand, the emotion contributions and so forth and so on. And in that interview, it's a brief discussion. It wasn't a full-fledged interview, a brief discussion about civil rebellion. And the WPA's name was mentioned, and he basically spoke about the contributions made by the WPA, and the fact that the WPA wasn't, and you are aware that the WPA has never come out publicly to say that they are a political party. In fact, there are leaders within the WPA, Dr. Clive Thomas, Dr. Ruknarain, and others who basically disassociated the WPA as that of a political party. They said it was never, even at the assassination, after the assassination of Dr. Walter Rodney, the WPA never declared itself a political party or a political movement.
Mark, can I stop you?
David Granger, President Granger said that the WPA didn't form as a political movement, it came as an idea.
Mark, can I stop you for a little bit?
Go ahead.
Yeah, can I offer you some education so that you wouldn't repeat what you just said there? The WPA as a pressure group was formed in November of 1974. 4 organizations: ASCREA, IPRA, WPVP by Brindley Ben, and Ratoon. Brindley Ben left shortly afterward. They were formed in 1974. Rodney came back and joined that organ as a pressure group. And they became a political party on July 26, 1979. Mark Benschop, I was there. I was on the platform.
I'm not going against what you have said. I'm not saying what you're saying is that. What I'm saying is that they were WPA leaders who have never, and I have interviewed some of them, who said that the WPA was not a political party.
That is not true, Mark. No WPA leader would say we became a political party in July 26, 1979. I was there. No leader will say that. You heard them wrong. I can put my neck on the block.
All right.
Mark is saying
I have my party card.
Mark is saying that there was never declaration of the WPA.
Yes, there was a declaration with a big public meeting. It was launched with a press conference during the day, July 26. I know it well. My first child was born on July 27th, 1979. I will never forget that. With a big meeting at what was then Border Green. This is fact. And that is why I'm saying Mr. Granger did not do very much of his research. Mark, I don't fault you because you weren't there in the time.
I'm not saying that what you've just said is not accurate. I have read that. But I appreciate you reminding your audience about that. Some of whom probably didn't know. However, what I'm saying that over the years, there have always been conflicting views from WPA leaders about the WPA, about the formation of the WPA and the objectives of the WPA. So you can't fault me. I know for sure.
Right.
And I will look for my interview. I do have a lot of these interviews to show that, yes, there were some leaders within the WPA who denied the fact that the WPA
which one of them, Mark?
All right, so you're going to get some clarity as we continue the discourse. I can't continue to allow this to unfold between the two of you. Other people listening, have a good day. Yes, Mark.
I notice you allow Ranelane more time than me. I want to have Ranelane's time this morning.
Why?
I need Ranelane's time this morning. One quick question before I go, Kadaki and Dr. Hans. And I really appreciate this discourse. You said that the WPA forced the PNC to change or to adopt policies relating to Africa. And then 2 minutes after that, you said that the WPA didn't really have to do that because Burnham government was actually...
Oh, Mark, you didn't hear me. You didn't hear me properly.
Mark, you missed it.
You didn't hear me properly, Mark. I said there was no need for a Black Power revolution as in Trinidad, as in the 1970 revolution. because Burnham here and Manling in Jamaica had begun to implement those policies. So we never had a Black Power revolution, as in Trinidad, where Black people weren't working in banks. Black people weren't in certain positions. Burnham had already pivoted in that direction. Michael Manley pivoted in that direction. So we didn't have a Black Power revolution. So, yes.
I'm going to come off and give back my 2 minutes to Mandela. Thanks, Doc.
No, but Mark, you should have me on. You should have me on to talk about the civil rebellion, not Granger.
You're coming on. You're coming on Friday night. You're coming on. You want Kadaki Friday night. See you Friday night.
Have a good one. Goodbye. I'm not sure about being able to commit to anything Friday night. A good friend of mine, her mother died in Linden. And so I'm supposed to go to funeral sometime Friday. I'm not even sure I'll be able to do the morning's program, but let's see how that evolves. Oh, goodness. I just remember Friday I got to cook for the children too. So we got to choose between the living and the dead. Yes, Dr. Hines. So the mic is yours again.
No, as I said, coming from Granger, I thought it was a good interview. I don't know if Mark or that. I didn't think. Where he suffered from was that he didn't have the information to do the analysis. You see? And that is why I'm giving this information, as I always do. I mean, I've had the good fortune of being part of the movement and also as a scholar to study and write on the movement. And people are now doing PhDs and master's thesis on things on the WPA and other organizations of that nature, because it's what you call recent history, and so I don't really blame brother David, because he didn't study the movement as much as he studied other aspects of our history. So I don't blame him, and I don't blame Mark, because like I said, sometimes things are passed down and people repeat them and they come to be truth. I know the day we became a political party. I know it. I was on the platform. As a 19-year-old, I was on that platform. I was the person who was doing the poems and the chants with Karen D'Souza and others. I wasn't a speaker in those days. I was there, and I know because my child was born the next day, my first child.
Thank you. So the association with WPA as failure.
You can say all political parties are failures. Because if you ask 50% of our people, they will say me and Dep on politics. Me and Dep on political party. In that sense, we are all failures. We are all failures in that sense. If you ask what a party in government has achieved, in government has achieved, that's a different question. Then you can't put the WPA there. We never were a government. We were part of the APNU AFC government for the 5 years. Brother Rupert was education minister for 2 or 3 years, 2 years. Sister Tabitha was public service minister for 2 years. And you can fairly ask what they achieved. And that would be a legitimate question, But you can ask what did Clive Thomas achieve at Sarah. You can ask what did Clive Thomas achieve as chairman of Gaisuku. Those are legitimate questions, but we never led a government. So ask what we achieved. As President Granger said, as far as he's concerned, the WPA never brought the good life. Well, how the hell can we bring the good life when we were not leading a government? The good life is for governments, and we were part of his government. And if we didn't bring the good life, then his government didn't bring the good life. So sometimes people get away with these political song bites, but that is why you have people like myself who study this thing and are here to fill in the gaps. The WPA did not achieve anything. We were in government under him from 2015 to 2020. So if he said we didn't achieve anything, then he didn't achieve anything. And if he said he didn't achieve anything, he would be lying on himself, because he did achieve some things of which we were part. But you see, sometimes where our political soundbites take us. Like I said, I think Brother Granger took on a topic that he wasn't prepared for.
In terms of achievement and delivering to the people and so on, I know there are at least 2 occasions when WPA had parliamentarians. You would know those periods better than I am. I would. You care to share some of the achievements of that period?
You don't achieve much in Parliament, Brother Kidaki, you know that. But you achieve when you get executive power.
It's 12 minutes past the 8 o'clock hour. Usually it's about time to open up the line. There's one other thing I think I wanted to ask. Yes. Listening to the interview, one would believe that the WPA was, I don't want to say anti-black or anti-black government, because it spoke about a
No, he didn't say that. You would be wrong if you say he said that. He said we were anti-PNC. Our only objective was to get rid of the PNC.
And so address that. Was it the only objective to get rid of the PNC? And I think he went further to say there appeared to be no other plan.
Yes, that is what he said. And I don't even think I should, because he went on to say it was a party made up of the best academics in Guyana. And to say that the best academics didn't come up with a plan is really defeating his own argument.
Doesn't even know they had a manifesto. I think I remember that.
Of course, WPA, they always said that from 1985, when we contest our first election, they always say, if manifestos were to win election, WPA would win manifestos. And I will also give another secret to put Mr. Granger's thesis to rest. The manifesto of the APNU AFC in 2011, 2015, and 2020 were written largely by the WPA. Put that in their pipes and smoke it. Don't get me ready here this morning. The manifestos of the 2011, 2015, and 2020, the majority of those manifestos were written by the WPA. So much for a party that didn't have plans. Some bites take you into places that you really don't intend to go. I think Brother Granger meant well, but he was speaking to an issue that he hadn't thought through.
Thank you there. All right, it's 8 hours 14. The lines are opened. I know a lot of people have a lot to say. So the lines are open. And as I wait your calls,
let me say one thing before we go into the question. History does not stand still. All right? As I said, Brother Dr. Gordon Roller coined the term where the fathers raise questions, the sons raise questions about what their fathers were doing. And by the time we get into the 21st century, the grandchildren of the grandchildren were bringing the parties back to the table. And that is how the APNU came into being. The APNU was a reconciliation of the confrontation between the PNC and the WPA. And out of that reconciliation came the APNU. And if we go through the Caribbean, we will see all the radical organizations like the WPA reconciling with the governments they challenge. Some of them are in those governments as we speak. Some of their children, the grandchildren. So we cannot see history as static. All right? The fathers challenged the colonial authorities. Their sons and daughters challenged them. And out of that challenge came some good things for our country and our region. And then it was left to the grandchildren to bring the father's legacy and the children's legacy together in what is now the APNU.
Thank you. Caller,
I just wanted to say that. Yes.
Caller, go ahead.
Pleasant good morning, Brother Kadaki, and a special good morning to your guest, Dr. David Hines. No, it is always nice to listen to Dr. Hines. I think he's well versed. He has a lot of history behind him, and he's a Guyanese scholar. He's a great son of the South. He's one of those persons who I think in this era would have taken over from the people that he idolized, Dr. Walter Rodney and Yusuf Bayano and these gentlemen. But I think one of the things that is failing us in this modern generation, right, is our unity. And when I say unity, I'm not speaking here about Guyanese unity because it is extremely difficult to get unity. I don't know if I will ever see it in my lifetime. But I'm speaking about unity among the African people or among the black people who get used that term. As a person who would have do some reading, every time a black leader rise up to bring some semblance of emancipation. When I say emancipation, I mean to bring some relief and help to the black man. It is his own colleagues who worked against their ideas and their ideals, and their opponents, whether it be in the colonial masters or in more modern times, the political opponents use those people to bring them down. Now, why I'm saying that, let me fast forward quickly. We had Burnham in Guyana, right? I believe Burnham is a great leader of the Caribbean and of the world, right? And we had Walter Rodney, who was probably one of the best persons to pass through Guyana. But instead of these two gentlemen work hand in hand, Dr. Walter Rodney, with all his brilliance and all his scholarly work or whatever, he fight against Burnham. And what happened? The opponents of Burnham used Dr. Walter Rodney. Fast forward to modern day, we had a coalition government. With all the troubles that we went through, PNC in opposition, 23 years in power, okay, God would have brought some relief and returned a coalition party to power. And you had the WPA there, you had the AFC there, and some others there. Now, these coming to power after 23 years of real roughness from the PVP, it's not something easy. And to run this country, there would have been some tremendous challenges. And instead of this coalition party working together to fight off all these problems that they were, because they were an experienced government. I thought there were some people in the coalition government or who were working the PVP days. They would undermine the coalition because of the amount of years that the PVP are there. So some people were still there. And there was a part of the coalition. They allowed some people to remain in key position, and the PVP used those persons to help bring down the coalition. But the PVP used some of the utterances of the same coalition people. And I'm speaking here of people like some people, with all the respect I have for Dr. David Hines.
Yes, I was part of that. Yes, that was used by the PNC, correct.
Party who would have, I am not saying the coalition did not fast, but if I'm in a home and me and my wife have some problem, I'm not going to go on the road and tell everybody that me wife this and me wife that and me wife that. And if she does that, I would tell her, go and live with them. You go and live with your people with time to. They at internal caucus. There are a lot of rumors that there are a lot of big things happening between the PP party. You hear people pulling guns on one another, you hear big them, you hear who slap who, and all that things are there, but nobody have no concrete evidence because they don't come out in public against one another. And if you observe the politics of Mr. Jack Teal, he always uses the opponents of the same people. You know, he said, did I say this and say that and say that? Or do we just for the last said this during the election crisis? Every time they talk, do we just for the last said this and he said it and he said it, he said, oh, Mr. Garland says he said that. Now the PNC have a little leadership battle. Long before this leadership thing was announced, Jack Teal started. Jack Teal started this and for that and for that, and they use it against one another. So I am saying, the coalition failed because the people in the AFC and people in the WPA, they fight against the core or the leadership rather of the coalition government. And this is why it went down. And people use it against them. And if we don't change that attitude, they will never return to power. And if they get back power, they don't fail again because of this attitude where we have people. You have people like Mandela in South Africa. You have people like the great man King in America. Who do you think that the opponents are used to bring down these people? It's the same people in the camp that are used to bring down these people. And there's something that there's a failure of the black. It happened since the days of biblical, since in Jesus Christ's days, it happened. We have a problem. We fight against ourselves and our opponents. Let's use it. So this is my contribution. So with all the respect I have for Dr. David, I am saying, with the brilliance of Dr. Walter Rodney, he should have joined with Barnum. I think that would have helped to liberate black people in the direction. And maybe some of the problems that we don't you know, maybe we pay for it because of what went on in those days. We pay for it because of what went on in those days. So sometimes we should cry. I think sometimes we need to defeat our own selves.
Call a point, mate.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Call it live.
Yes, good morning. Good morning to you. Good morning, Mr. David. Welcome back. Good morning to all my black brothers and sisters in Guyana. Help us on the way. But we have to do our best and leave the rest for Mr. Aguinaldo, what God sent. Mr. David, your show last night I did not sleep because of what I heard. Today I wouldn't use the word that Cody brother. I would use the word that Indian brother. He mentioned something to you that I would have to say just now. I'm going to ask the question, is there any more men living in Guyana? Is there Guyana have any army in Guyana? Or any choices? Because this Indian brother, he was not afraid to speak out. He's not afraid for telling men in Guyana, stand up and fight. Stand up and fight, face Jagdio, face the three of them. This man said, that touched my heart. He said, what Jagdio did is wrong to the black people. Cut back black people money. What Mr. Vincent Alexander used to take care of, what he did not cut the Indian own money, same like Jason. He goes so far and said, what Jagdio did, the government did. No justice for that guy who gets 7 bullets. He used the word 7 shots. He used the word and said, Barcelona get killed, no justice. And they're talking about democracy. Flash Garden always said, black people got to remove from that word democracy. If Cody not using it, black man must not use that word democracy. That Indian brother said something last night. We got to ask the question, is there any black men still live in Guyana Jack, you're calling black men wife, low life, and he's still walking in black man neighborhood. That is getting forgotten hungry. But there we coming and fighting each other. Let me remind you what this lady in the word of God, because God said in everything you do, and say, always remember me. The lady with the issue of blood, when she heard Jesus in her neighborhood, or next to her, or the corner, she said, today, I will get my heal. If I gotta push my way, if I gotta crawl and go, today I'm gonna get what belongs to me, what Jesus died for. She said, if I only touch the M, not the whole body, she didn't want to shake your hand, but the M, that is a strong belief. I know I will be healed. It is time for black men, push their way, push your way. Like that, you know, today, you got to pay teachers. If you could find money for bring a singer, what school children cannot benefit for, find money for us. Black men never come out. Come out. Don't wait till tomorrow. Jack Joe said dark days. You know what dark days mean? It's killing and punishment, slavery. He used the word in front. His supporters, them calling people dark days. In other words, he tell it, it's calling supporters them. Brighter days is coming for you. And dark days for black people. Then don't use the word I said. We're going to get big money. 27. If they don't want to give you from the small money, they will give you from big money. Black men, if there's any black men living in Guyana, God said, push your way like that woman. Push your way like that woman and get healed and get victory. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I'll take no calls now. I'll allow Dr. Hines to respond to.
No. You can take more calls. I spoke a lot, Brother Kidaki.
Okay,
it's your program. But with all due respect, I have spoken a lot.
We'll take more calls. Call all the line. But when Sir Jordan is saying you would like to know, you would like you, Dr. Hines, to do a review on Nagamutu's latest book. It's his story, hence his interpretation, right? Why doesn't similar writings emanate from the likes of Greenwich, Corbin, Green? And why doesn't scholars like yourself, Dr. Hines, undertake to write the history of Burnham and Hoyt? Even read. Must we only get our history from the Western trial? Right?
That's Mr. Jordan's. All of that from Mr. Jordan.
Yes, right.
Yes.
I have a comment line. So you're
I'm at page 272 in Nagamutu's book. And I have how many more pages to go?
How many pages the book has?
The book has 378 pages.
Okay.
So I have a little bit more. So Winston can be assured that I will do a review. And we are on the same page, Winston. I can't put on the glasses properly. But this is one of the things been slowing me down. Because the 3 books I am reading is Nagamutu's book simultaneously. The book on Jagan by Clint Ceteran, and this book on Forbes Burnham by Professor Lyndon Lewis. I have a what they call the blurb. The publisher that asked me to give a blurb on this book by Forbes Burnham, which I did. So I was able to read the manuscript or parts of the manuscript before it was published. And I think I said in the blurb, a compelling account of the politics and leadership of Guyana's most controversial political leader. This is more than a biography. Lewis paints a portrait that gives the reader a deeper understanding of the motions of an important slice of the post-colonial politics of the Anglophone Caribbean. So I am reading these 3 books, Winston, and I am going to do a review of each of them. And I myself have been toying recently in putting together a book on Caribbean leadership. I've written a chapter for a book on Janet Jagan. I have something on Quyan, of course. I have something on Walter Rodney. And it occurred to me that I need to do something on Jagan, Burnham, and Hoyt. So you are on target where my head is to complete my own, and it is for younger people, younger readers, you know, to reintroduce them to these people, you know. So yes, Winston, my head is in that direction.
Thank you. Caller, your life. Go ahead.
Neighbor, morning by morning.
Morning, neighbor.
Times.
Good morning, brother.
Morning. Now, the caller before, Brother Flash, I already mentioned something that concerning, you know, the little infighting, and he go on to state a thing that this will cause we forget lose power in 2020, and I want to disagree that we didn't lose power, we were forced out of power, and there's a difference with that. So the one side. The next thing is that with Brother Flash is concerned, sometimes I can't take sorry he get this knowing for beating people to the punch. Now I say I go set myself up for let Brother David know how the show being on. Brother Flash beat me to the punch. You don't know how his story does go, sir. But Brother David, let me tell you, last night was goosebumps to goosebumps. When I checked the ratings and all kind of things, so tell thing going up. Last night was a bomb, brother. Last night was a bomb that I tell you, some things, you know, I could imagine the amount of listeners that was slumped in the chairs listening to real reasoning. I feel the only body was uncomfortable was Barry Jack Dio. I feel the only body, even the trolls had something to walk away with, even the trolls. But it's because of this iron fist ruler we got in, he make the kind like speak out for talk where they hear the truth coming from. I see these programs, Buxtonian Morning Time, Politics 101, In the Ring, and FYI, and Straight Up, and these programs, you know, seeing that we in, this is why I say, seeing that we in the election of the opposition, of the main opposition, the PNC, my advice is maybe use it and try to see how we could be able to unite the contestants against one another. You know, and even the people that the voters and those who looking on and those who got, you know, them support, who the supporting and them kind of thing. Let me try my best not to allow, you know, the heat to get out of hand by using these platforms to help to, you know, quail and unite and let the voters, them who might ignorant of the fact, to understand what is it about the elections and things. But last night, Politics 101, it was a bomb for the whole night. Politics 101, In the Ring, and Straight Up. Some real good scene happened there last night, and I want to say thank you all very much, brother. And now we coming back into the morning for Buxtonian Morning Time. You know, what a way to go. What a way to go. And I want to say thank you so much, Dr. Hines, Brother Kadaki. Thank you so much. Let me keep up. The fight, keep encouraging and keep blotting out the negativity. You understand? Let me keep blotting out the negativity. Thank you so much, Dr. Hines, Brother Kadaki, Brother Mark Benschop, Brother Sherrod Duncan, and all the rest who bring in the truth, who is not being told in the government news agencies. Then thank you so much.
Thank you,
so
Colin.
much.
Yes.
Any responses you want to make, Dr. Hines?
No, I will make some general
Right.
responses towards the end. Yes.
So I'll all right, let me take this one. Call it live.
Morning, Dr. Hines. Morning to that.
Good morning, brother.
Nice program, nice education, loving it. I will deal with something. A Buddhist saying, right? The past as long, no more happening, right? The present happening. The future has not yet happened. All right? Why I'm saying that is that Mr. Granger said y'all did nothing in the past, right? Y'all didn't achieve nothing. Well, the future is yet to come. And you know why the future is going to come to show what y'all have achieved? And we're living some of the future right now is because of what WPA is doing. Because of the split and the divisiveness in the APNO, in the PNC party, it's like you're not seeing what you're doing. But a lot of pressure that is coming down today, and a lot of things that has been started because of WPA. The couple of y'all, right? What y'all are doing is putting some serious pressure. And according to Buddhists, the gone. But they hate now we can deal it because we're in a war and we're setting up this war to win and fight to prepare a better future. And this is what WPA is doing. WPA is doing a perfect job in present. So, Brother Granger, you could hold on to past. We deal with present and setting it up for a bigger future to come because we're in a revolution right now. And this time we don't need people like you to pull it down and continue to pull down and divide. We don't need that. Right now, it's about coming together in the present and dealing and setting up a brighter future for the people. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, caller. I'm sure I have some voice notes. Let me get to them so that we can hear all contributions.
Good morning to Dr. Hinds, Kadaki, and all viewers. It's my view that if joins the coalition as they did. Good morning to Dr. Hinds, Kadaki, and all viewers. It's my view that if the WPA joins the coalition as they did before, they would suffer the same use and abuse as they did under the Granger administration. We saw Dr. Hinds being fired, Rupnarayan being removed from the Ministry of Education. And with the exception of Aubrey Northing, WPA would suffer again because to me there is an old grudge against the WPA by the elitists within the PNCR. And the coalition would need somebody like the WPA party to campaign where I know for myself that some members of the coalition cannot go. The WPA has the right message, and it would be left for Aubrey Norton and Kadaki and David Hinds to come together to campaign in those places that I know would reject any other party member. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that said by this voice noted of Hinds, something I wanted to ask about, let me say, listening to Granger, would you say it is that quote unquote mindset which influenced the way the WPA was treated in the coalition?
I want to be fair to Mr. Granger, Kadak, and I know the origins of your question, and I can understand it's a fair question. I know Mr. Granger personally before he went. In my first book that was published, I'm even forgetting the title of my own book now. It's been so long. Mr. Granger published that book for me single-handedly, did everything, preparation, everything. When I would come to Guyana my 2 or 3 times per year. The first place I would go, I land in Guyana today.
Hey.
The next day I gone to Queenstown to Mr. Granger. So we developed a very good relationship, and I think Mr. Granger's intentions were well-meaning. There were attributes that he brought to the politics that was needed at the time. He brought a kind of uprightness to the politics that wasn't there at the time. He brought a kind of clear-headedness of our history that was needed at the time. I think there were areas that he was not strong. He didn't understand politics in a real organic way. I don't think he understood political economy in a way that others were understood it. And I don't think he understood the relations between the WP and the PNC and how much we had done by the time we got into power to repair that breach. And so therefore, to continue it when we was in government, I think he didn't quite understand those things. And so therefore some errors were made. Some errors were made. But I like to see Mr. Granger in balanced terms. Somebody who was well-meaning, somebody brought a sense of uprightness, a sense of the rule of law, a sense of, I mean, I always say, political opponents weren't killed under Granger. They weren't thrown in jail and all those things under Granger. And I think that was a very important pause in our political history. But I think he didn't understand some rudimentary thing about politics. I've heard a certain minister said, for example, and I wouldn't call his name, but you know, a certain minister said on this very program that, you know, there was not even an attempt to buy somebody over from the PPP. You know, I'm saying that to say there was a dimension of politics that Mr. Granger didn't grasp because he had not been in politics very long. You know, he was not an activist. And so here you were, one seat, and you never even tried to buy, people trying to buy your people. And they eventually bought one and brought you down. But you never tried to buy. And I thought Mr. Granger was not kind of attuned to that dimension of politics. I think once oil was found, the government needed to pivot. And I didn't think they pivoted. And I think it had a lot to do with Mr. Granger's leadership. Because, you know, we are a leaderist kind of political culture. And while there were other people in the cabinet who I'm sure recognized the moment and what to do, I don't think that Mr. Granger himself recognized how much Guyana was going to change with the finding of oil. And so therefore, you have to anticipate certain things and put certain things in place. So I want to be fair to Mr. Granger. You know, he brought some positivity to our politics. Those 5 years was a real cooling off point for our country. But I think there were other areas that he did not have a keen sense. He didn't manage. And I think that's the gist of your question. He didn't manage. We were not just only a coalition of parties. Even within the PNC itself, it was a coalition. You had people like Winston Jordan who weren't party members. In a sense, these were people who were sympathetic to the party and the cause and had come into the government. So even within the PNC, there was a coalition that I didn't think that Mr. Granger understood those dynamics. And so he didn't manage the coalition in ways. We had come a long way in terms of the first caller talked about. What the first caller really was talking about is diversity. Unlike on the Indian side, politically, on the black side, we have always had diversity. And I don't think we have managed that diversity. And so the call is saying we're always fighting against each other and so on. And you know, self-critique, internal self-critique is a good thing, but you have to manage it. You have to manage it, you see?
Hey.
And I think we have not managed it over time, and I think Granger did not manage the internal dynamics. Look, let me say this and then I'll shut up on this. WPA begged Mr. Granger, boss, create an internal, what we call a kitchen cabinet, where the parties, when the government is going to put a policy out there, put that policy to the parties. So you have a kind of party cabinet, and let us go through it before it goes to the formal cabinet. And we never got anywhere with that. It was not until we were going to the 2020 elections, and the WPA had gotten so fed up that we weren't even sure we were going to the 2020 elections, that Mr. Granger finally said, I agree to this kitchen cabinet if we win in 2020. Because we felt that we had to have internal mechanisms where we can discuss policies and discuss our differences. I heard one of the first caller said, you know, we needed to internally, you know, work out our problems and don't wash our dirty linen. We fought for internal mechanisms so that we can iron out our differences. Never happened. To be fair to Mr. Granger, he did promise that if he were to win in 2020, he was going to implement that kind of internal mechanism. So people like myself did not have to go outside. And there was no mechanism inside. For me, people like myself to say, I don't like what's happening. No mechanism. We tried. We had retreats. I remember one special retreat after Dr. Rupnarayan was fired, and we created hell. And we agreed to a retreat. We took decisions at that retreat. Never happened. No, I can understand. When you're running a government, it is hard to run party at the same time. And so what Mr. Granger should have done was to delegate somebody to run the intra-party cabinet while he runs the government cabinet. And I think in going forward with coalition, those are the lessons we can learn. And I'd say one last thing. I have learned my lessons from that period. And that is why once Aubrey Norton came to office, if you notice, I have not engaged in any strident criticism of Aubrey Norton. And whoever takes over the leadership, in the PNC, if the leadership is changed and somebody else, it is going to be my attitude. And my attitude is informed by our experiences during the coalition period. And the first caller pointed to that weakness. And so therefore, I have adopted my attitude. People say that I'm a Norton man and all those kinds of things. And I take that criticism. But really, my objective is not so much pro-Norton or anti-Norton. My objective is to ensure that we have on our side of the aisle, we have to operate at two levels. We have to operate at the level of Black people. They are the majority of our supporters. And then we have to operate at the level of opposition, where you have Indian and Amerindian people. So there are two levels of on the opposition has to operate at. And I am committed to ensure that we manage our coalition in opposition so that when we get into government, we would have had that experience of managing the coalition and managing our differences. If I have a big difference with Aubrey Norton, I call him. You know? So I'm saying I have learned from the experience of the coalition in government. And as we prepare for a new government, I'm saying that we should have a different attitude. I think the problems they have in the PNC, if I can say something about my sister party, the problem they have in the PNC is that we have a new moment, a new Guyana, a new era in this country and in the world. And the PNC has to catch up with this time, and they're slow in catching up. And so therefore, the party is going through the tortures of having to adapt itself to the present day Guyana. How you deal with these out of control, cantankerous people you have in government. How you deal with the external intervention. How you deal with the fact that we are indeed, by GDP, a rich country. How you deal with Venezuela. There are a whole host of things that has changed our politics. And I think the PNC has not caught up with that yet. And so when you see the pulling and tugging among the leader, it's really that struggle to really bring the party up to speed with the present situation. We in the WPA are going through our own contortions. Let me don't just say it's PNC alone. Within the WPA, as small as we are also having our own contortions as we seek to bring a party that came out of a certain tradition 50 years ago, to bring it up to speed with this new environment that we could not have envisaged 50 years ago. So we are going through our own contortions. Does the WPA structurally, is it suited for this present period? Are our ideas about our political parties organized? Are those ideas still relevant today? We are going through those very questions, those contortions. It's not being done in the public as in the PNC. But I think that's where we are at the moment in the opposition. Our parties have to catch up with the times. And it means, therefore, that we have to have a different mindset, a different praxis, and different ideas of how to contend with the period that we are facing with. Am I still on? Oh,
Yes, you're still on, Dr. Hines.
Yes.
It's 9 o'clock hour. Call it live.
Yes, good morning, Dr. Hines, and good morning, Mr. Amsterdam. Good morning, everyone in the Guyanese diaspora. Good morning to all Guyanese. I wanted to ask the question to both Dr. Hines and Mr. Amsterdam and the general audience listening. Do we believe that Guyana's, well, democracy on the whole, do we believe that what we are trying to flesh out, given the nature of our complaints, given the unanswered questions, given the lack of accountability, right? Do we believe it's appropriate to ask candidates running up to these congressional elections for the PNC? And I know you're not PNC members, but the decision that the PNC members will make will affect all of us. So that means all of us have to have a say. We're all involved. In that sense, do we believe that it's appropriate to ask candidates to have an open platform for debate? Do we believe that debating is necessary? Out of debating, when we look at the United States, for example, we see that persons are able to flesh out. The audience is able to say, you know, Mr. Obama, you ran on this particular agenda, and we're not seeing you doing much on it. And he'll say, well, we have a bill on the floor on that, right? The Dreamers Act, for example. Biden ran on immigration. Immigration is a big issue for Guyanese, right? For all of us who are concerned. So how do we know? How do we keep candidates accountable? For example, if we don't hold Biden accountable on immigration, then he could come in. He doesn't have to be accountable for anything because he never said anything that we could hold him accountable for during debates. So he'll come in, doesn't have any promises to keep. 5 years is finished, and we can't hold him to anything. other than his manifesto. But we are saying, even in the manifesto, are you going to debate the manifesto? You see, there needs to be things which we need to ask candidates and let them know that we are interested in these issues, rather than a candidate just come to Georgia this weekend, or come to New York, as Amanza is, or Kermit Norton is, or anyone is, Granger or Jack Deere or anyone else, for example, to a Guyanese. Do we feel it necessary to ask them to debate before us on social media so that we can know what it is that they're offering, which is the best idea, how do they intend to change this stagnation so that we can solve these complaints? We are going into a Congress with a truckload of complaints. 23 years of complaints, plus the recent 3 years of complaints. I think that calls for some degree of explanation. All right? That calls for some degree of explanation. And on the issue of where President Granger made some faults, we have to be a prepared electorate. We have to ask Kermit Norton and Amanza or whoever, or Vince Roy Jordan or whoever, how do we intend to not make those same mistakes, which have already repeated themselves since 2020 in the local government elections? You see, so we have to be able to have an agenda for candidates. Now, I know we've been accustomed, based upon my observation, where candidates come and they tell us what they plan. And we need to now say, well, this is what we have. And I think this is where collective bargaining must come to the table, as I spoke about before. We now have to have the attitude that we are coming to these meet and greet sessions with a list, which we want to see going forward. And this list, our demands collectively in a consensus, must factor their way into the manifesto. So when come election time and you get in position and eventually become president, we're expecting you to make good on some of these promises. Either when you're in opposition, out of government, or even when you become executive branch and elected as president. So I just want to put that on the table, why candidates are gearing up to be elected. Let's ask them, what do they plan to do different? And we are for a debate. We want a debate. We need it. So people can tell us categorically what they are for. Once again, thank you for affording me the time. Let's not lose that opportunity.
Thank you. Now, guys, it's 1:09. I have 2 or 3 voice notes I'll play, and then we'll wrap up.
A very blessed good morning to you, Mr. Kadaki, and a very blessed good morning for your program and those in the diaspora. I have nothing much to say right now, but one thing I want to put order. If the God bless WPA, God bless you, Mr. Mr. Kadaki, and all those who formed that party. If the AP and you had only take on board the advice that Mr. Ein was given in the past, the AP and you are still there in power today. I am saying that because I was there supporting this full house, and Mr. Ein was advising them. They are not reaching the mass of the people and was giving them, and they didn't take them on board. So if, and that time is when Mr. Granger, you were in power at that time. And if you take on board and recognize that the WPA have meaning and was very effective, maybe I'm saying you would be in power right now. So get equip yourself and understand. Long live WPA. I respect WPA until I die, and everybody got a loan to understand. Give Jackie jacket and give Jill Shakur. Have a blessed day, Mr. Kadaki. God bless you, Mr. Hines. God bless you. And the whole of the Guyanese nation. We're going to get there. We're going to get there and they're going to realize your WPA value, at least in this election we're coming in. Have a blessed day.
Just on a little double dip, Brother Kadaki. Dr. Hines, I forget to mention to say a big shout out and a big thanks to Brother GHK Lal for that well articulated and put together piece that he put out on the show last night. It was so inspiring and it was so entertaining and it was so great. And I want to say thanks so much to Brother GHK Lal for as a decent, as a humble, and as a real, Indian brother. I'm not saying this to say that the rest aren't real, but the way how he bravely put together his pieces, is that we need so much more like him, so much more like him. So much more from the brothers like him of all ethnicity. So, Brother GHK Lal, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Brother Kadaki, I hear it state that whosoever win in the PNC.
Dr. Hines, closing thoughts, please.
Yes, thanks to those who felt last night's program was exceptional. I felt it. Sometimes you sit there and you can feel the energy, and thanks much for those of you who we recognize. As I said on the program, multiracialism for me is not putting Indian face and black face together and say multiracial. Is the capacity of those of one group to feel the pain of the other group. And that group that is going through the pain must have the capacity to absorb that feeling coming from someone from another group. That for me is the essence of multiracialism. Not so much how well you get along with your own, but how you're able to feel for the other side. And yes, I felt that adrenaline last night. Thanks much for that. The question of that Coffee raised, I think it's a fair question, and I agree that the candidates who are running for the PNC, because it's the PNC the presidential candidate is going to come from, or somebody the PNC agrees to if the person doesn't come from the PNC. The PNC is the big party. The PNC is, as I put it, I think most of the opposition supporters today, if you go to them, their bodies, you will have to, their bodies are divided. Some of them may be 75% PNC, 25% other parties. Some of them may be 25% PNC, 75% other parties. I don't think any party in the opposition has a monopoly on the individuals in the opposition. That is my view as I take a look at the way things are developing. And so what happens in that party is important. I would argue that what we need to hear from them is not so much what they will do, but their vision. I think this is the time when vision is needed. We are now into a new era, a political alignment, as we say in political science. Right? There's a political realignment of the Guyanese political landscape. This is not the old Guyana, right? This is a Guyana that is transitioning into a petro state and everything that comes with that. And so I think we need new visions. And I think what we have to ask of the PNC contestants and leadership, and what we have to ask of the leadership of the other opposition parties too, is what is their vision? I think it's a vision that we are lacking. It's, you know, we can roll out, you know, we're going to do this, we're going to put this policy, we're going to think, you know, it's the vision. You see, the PPP has a vision, a warped vision, and that's a vision of domination, and control. What is our vision? And that's where I think that we have to ask the PNC leaders to come up with. And I think that is the area, if you ask me, is where we are lacking and why we're not connecting with our supporters. Is that our supporters are looking for a vision, something that will show them the way, And I think that's where we've been lacking. All of us have been lacking in putting before our people a vision of where we want to take the country, where we want to take them in particular, and what's their place in this larger vision that we are articulating. We, however, have to be very careful, because I don't think we are as developed as a political culture where we can compete with each other, and then when the competition is finished, work as a team. I think we are still lacking in that area. I will not be carrying tales out to school to say one of the reasons the coalition didn't work as well as we should have worked is that the PNC was not fully healed from the political contestation for leadership. They weren't healed, and we went into government with a lot of bad blood coming out of the contestation for leadership in the PNC. Very bad blood. And it really took a toll on the government. It would not be apparent to the viewer and the follower, because we know when your party's in power, you don't scrutinize them too much. But that thing took a toll on the government, the strains and the leftovers from that contestation, because we are not really fully developed. And part of the weakness of our political culture, our elite political culture, is that we can't deal with dissent. I think that's where we in the WPA went against Burnham. As I said, you know, policy-wise, Burnham was on spot most of the time. But as a leader, he didn't deal very well with dissent. And that's where the breach between him and the radicals. And it wasn't just the WPA. The WPA was outside. Burnham ran into problems with the YSM in his own party. You know, he would listen, but at the end of the day, he made the decisions. You know? And when Norton was running, Norton said, I do not want to be a maximum leader. And I thought that was so incisive, because I think Norton recognized that maximum leadership has not been a good thing for us. You see? And so therefore, we don't deal well with those who don't agree with us. You know? So while I am for the debate and so on among the contestants, I'm also quite conscious that our political culture is not developed to the point where we can disagree on vision, disagree on policy, but work together. And I go back to the very first caller, who I think laid out the problem, didn't do it as artfully, because he said we're always fighting with each other. There's, on our side, there's always been contestation, and the African Guyanese are not a naturally clannish people. We come from different clans. You know, we weren't Africans until we came over this side of the Atlantic. when we were there, we were from different ethnic groups, different tribes. And we became African. We become Mati when we were on the ship, meaning Métis, and that's where the term Mati come from. Become Mati on the ship, because when we look around in those holes, all we could see is people with our color. And we quickly had to become African. So we are not a naturally clannish people, all right? And so therefore there is much more political diversity among Africans than you may find among Indians or Amerindians, you see? And so therefore we have to find a way to manage that diversity, you know? What it would have taken for a Rodney and a Burnham to work together. Now we have the template of Guyana and Burnham working together from 1957 to 1971. There's a template there. And that is why studying Guyana is important, because that's the template there. It lasted for 14 years. They worked together for 14 years. And my reading of those 14 years, I would say it was the best time politically for African Guyanese, because you had the two strong leaders, the cultural leader and the political leader, culture and politics coming together. And we have a very good economic policies, political direction, foreign policy. They all came out of that. Burnham gets the credit because he's the leader, you know, but a lot of that period was the coming together of what I call the Burnham strand in the Black consciousness and the Guyana strand in the Black consciousness that really created that thing. But we lost our way after 1971. And sometimes, you know, we say it's not just easy for Rodney to come and say, I want to work with Burnham. You know, there are forces at work. And like I said, we came full circle back at the turn of the 21st century. And the APNU really saw the Guyana Burnham praxis coming back into play. But I'm saying that the leadership of the PNC did not manage it well. Robert Corbin is the person who has to be credited on the PNC side for recognizing that we had to go back to the Burnham-Guyana axis. And he worked with us in the WPA to do it, but he did not go into government. And so he didn't have a chance to manage it. Somebody else took over. And I think that leadership that took over, and it's not just Granger, I think there were others who didn't understand what had happened. They had not gone to West Bobis as I have gone with Rupert Rupnarine. And as we went into Belladrum and El Dorado and Weldad and Seafield and Hope Tongue, Black people were coming to us and said, brothers, with tears in their eyes, thank God for what you do. We now don't have to choose between Burnham people and Guyana people. Rupert Rupnarine is not an emotional person. But as we drove back from those walkabout in those villages, I saw for the first time emotions in Brother Rupert. You know, that told us that what we were doing was something that went beyond just practical politics. And I think the leadership that took us into government didn't understand that. They thought they were just dealing with WPA and PNC. They didn't understand what we had done. But Corbyn understood it. We didn't understand. Those who took over the leadership of the government didn't understand it. You see? And I'm going back to the first caller because he raised a very important question. And I think we still have not gone a long way in terms of understanding that these things start among the people. And I always use my own village, Buxton. Even in the days when the PNC and the WPA were each other's throat, we used to drink together in that village, PNC people and WPA people. We used to drink together, party together, hang out together. We never became enemies. We were adversaries. What was more important is that we had a village, you know, the village ties bonded us. The ties that bind us, I think is in my head. You see? And that is a challenge for us going forward. We are a diverse people. We are a diverse people and we have diverse ideas. But if we can bring our ideas together over an overarching vision, I think that's what characterized the Guyana-Burnham relationship between 57 and 71. It was the sharing of a larger vision that sustained that relationship. And that is what we hoped to replicate when the APNU was formed. Unfortunately, you know, we had a leadership that didn't quite understand the genesis, didn't understand the organic nature. They thought APNU was just the coming together of parties and didn't realize APNU was the healing of African Guyanese. The pain that they went through after Guyana broke with Burnham. And that thing lasted for almost 30 years, you know? And we had gone a long way towards healing that breach, but the leadership didn't understand it. Didn't understand it. You see? And I am pleading that we have another chance now, because we have a whole new generation of young Black people who are socialized in this new environment in which they're seeing plainly that the other side wants to treat them as chattel. And they're developing a consciousness of themselves as a group. And the leadership, I don't think, has caught up. I don't think a lot of the PNC leaders yet understand. You see, as I said, opposition in Guyana has to be seen at two levels. In the racial level, meaning the majority of your supporters are Black. So you have to address opposition at the racial level. And then you have to address it at the coalition level. That is Blacks and Indians and Amerindians who are now part of the opposition. So it's two levels. And I think our leadership tend to understand it at the level of, you know, Indians and Africans, you know, coming together and we're all suffering together. You hear that from them all the time. They understand that. What they don't understand is that 90% of their support base has to have particular treatment. So you have to be nimble. You know, a dance man is a nimble dance man, you know. You waltz in and the dance floor crowded, and you're not supposed to touch somebody. You see somebody there, you swing and you think. I don't think our opposition leaders nimbleness to understand how to navigate between the two manifestations of opposition. There's the racial opposition, and then there is the multiracial or political opposition. And I think that's where our leadership, and since we are talking about the PNC, I think that's where the PNC leaders are lacking. They understand the one-dimensional politics. All we are suffering, and Indian people and African people, but you also have 90% of African people who are feeling suffering in a particular way, and they have to. And you have to address that. So one should not alienate the other. We have to find a way to integrate our message. So I just want to leave that on the ground, and thanks, Coffee, but we have to get them on vision, and we have our vision has to be, we have to hear a vision that is recognizing the new Guyana, but also recognizing the new support base, because the opposition support base has changed also, and they have to change because Guyana's changed, and we have to understand that dynamics. And I am not, in my humble opinion, I don't think the leaders in our big party understand the dynamics of their own support base and how their own support base has itself undergone change.
Quite a mouthful. It's 9:20. It's the 10th of April in the year 2024. I am the host, Kidaki Amsterdam. You're tuned to the Guyanese Morning Time. Dr. Hines, thank you for coming today.
Thank you,
this is a
brother.
conversation
Always
that
a
will go on for the rest of the day, but we have limit with time.
Yes, sir.
We're half hour past the program time already. We'll continue these
Yes, sir.
discourses. A lot of people seem to believe that these discourses are not warranted. People see it as washing dirty linen in public. People see it as fighting each other. People see it as all kinds of things. Education is empowerment. And these programs are intended to educate. They're not intended to put PNC against WP and WP against PNC and so on, and even WP against the PPP and so on. What at least my intention is to educate the populace on what is going on in the society, what we consider wrong in the society, what might be working in the society, etc. At the end of the day, it is the people who will have to make their decisions. Good. Have a great day. See you guys tomorrow for another program of Guyanese Morning Time. Dr. Hines is on tonight with Politics 101. Mark said he's going to have Dr. Hines speak about the civil rebellion on Friday on what's that program? Straight Up? Is it still Straight Up, Paul? But the processes will continue. That's all I want to say. Peace and love. Goodbye. Have a great day.